Hello, greetings. So it's time for another Gorean topic. And the one I'm going to discuss today is the natural order and how I feel that a lot of people misunderstand what the natural order actually is. Now, a lot of people say that no, the natural order, that's one of the core tenets of the Gorean philosophy, and therefore, if you are a dominant female or a submissive male, you cannot be Gorean because it's against the natural order. But here's the thing. If it occurs in nature, it's natural. You misunderstand what a natural order is. Let me try to explain. Let's have a look at, for example, migratory birds. Migratory birds will, when spring or autumn comes, depending on the species of birds, for example, in Norway, there's a lot of migratory birds that fly to sometimes warmer places in Norway, sometimes other nations when autumn comes, and I do this every year. It's natural, it's part of their species, part of being that kind of bird is that they will take off and fly towards warmer areas. Yes? Now, something that then disrupts this natural order would be, for example, you take that bird and stick it in a cage. Then something, an outside force have interacted with that natural order, prevented it from happening. The same can happen with, for example, the radio signals from airplane towers. First, know that they can disrupt them. A lot of things to do with electricity and so on, because it disrupts the navigation. The same way warming weather. A lot of things that can disrupt that. That's an artificial change of that natural order. And that tends to afflict these birds negatively, because it's not how they are supposed to go. It goes against their natural order. Yes, with me so far? Wonderful. Now, however, there are some of these birds that has changed their pattern. They manage to find food and survive during winter, and they stay. Sometimes it's just some individual of a flock, and sometimes it's whole little colonies that does this. Now, what they then do differentiate from the norm of their species, but it's still natural. It's nothing, they are not held back. Science doesn't know exactly why they do this, but they still do, and it's basically what they do is not normal, but it's still natural. They are now following a new natural order for them. The same way that Goreans believe that it's basically more women than men are submissive. And Goreans also believe that if you are going to be a healthy, well-adjusted human being, able to reach for greatness, you should live according to your own inner nature. As such, if you are naturally submissive, you should be naturally submissive. If you are naturally dominant, you should be naturally dominant. However, if you are naturally dominant, but you're female, or naturally submissive, if you're male, then you should also live out that, because that's the natural way for you. It's natural, it's abnormal, but it's still natural. And as such, if you then try to force yourself to live in a way that doesn't fit you, just to follow some ideal, then you are going completely against that philosophy. Here's the thing. In the Gore books, every female is submissive and every male is dominant. There also are no such things as transsexuals or anything else that goes from that very nice A4 idea. But that's in the books. But if you're going to follow a lifestyle, especially a naturalistic one, you have to look at nature, not a book. A book can be a guide, it can be a help. But if you go by the guide of that book and you need something that doesn't fit with what's in that book, you have to follow nature and reality and not the book. Excuse me, I'm just going to move the computer a little bit so that we will get less sunlight. Let's see, excuse me. There we go. I hope I didn't make anybody motion sick. Anyway, moving on. So, it's a little bit like that. You know those GPS things that's supposed to help you find your way? Yes, they can be a great help, great guide, a great way to get from point A to point B in an easier way. We agree? Excellent. Now, the problem is this. If that map says turn left, 500 meters forward, turn left, but 500 meters and turn forward, that will send you off a cliff. I think it's pretty wise to follow reality rather than the GPS. The same with the Gorean books. They are a great way to understand and implement ideas and philosophies that are quite older than those books. They were practiced in a different version, of course, but quite similar to what the ancient Romans believed, the Spartans, the Vikings, things that has been discussed by people like, for example, Nietzsche. If you hear that, that's just a helicopter going over my house. And a lot of other philosophers. And as such, yeah, it's a great way to do that. It's a great tool. However, one thing that's very important to remember is that it is a tool. If you follow it slavishly, then you're just giving up your freedom to a set of books. You have to think, and the book, you have something that's called the world reduction in fiction, and it is of course world reduced to be able to function as a story. So yeah, you have to take that philosophy, but you have to look at real life, and in real life there are women that are dominant and there are men who are submissive, and that is just as natural, it's just not as common. So yeah, of course, a lot of Goreans say that, no, you should enforce this. Women should be enforced to be submissive. That's just as wrong as saying we have to make sure everything is equal. Everything is part of this grey mass of equality. Because it's still messing with the natural order of things. It's the point of the Gorean philosophy is not to have submissive women and dominant men. That's just a side effect. Because the point is to follow nature, and in nature there are more women that are submissive than there are men. Let me try to explain it as a friend of mine on Facebook said. Not going to say his name here, but if you watch this video, you know who you are. That if you can look at submissiveness and dominance as a scale, then you can say that, for example, most men are on 50 on that scale. And in the middle. And that's the norm. And then you have some that are very dominant and some that are very submissive. With me? Wonderful. And then you have women, but let's say they are on where basically 0 is very submissive and 100 is uber dominant. That's so dominant that mountains come running when they call for them. Anyway, then if men perhaps are at 50 at that scale, you can say that the average woman perhaps are at 20. Then you will still have women that are uber dominant, and you will have women that are extremely submissive, but most women, the average for women, are more submissive. You can say it's about that. One nation might have an average intelligence of 97, and another nation might have an average intelligence of 110. That doesn't mean that the 97 nation don't have very smart people. They can have people with an IQ of 240. It doesn't mean that the 110 nation doesn't have stupid people. They can have people with an IQ of 60. It's just that the norm tends to be more towards intelligence for one of the nations, and the norm tends to be more towards less intelligence for the other nation. Same way that you have more women are submissive than men, but not all. And it's not a goal in itself that a woman should be submissive. The goal is that people follow their natures. You see, the problem with our modern Western society, so you have this idea everybody needs to be equal no matter what. And there's a lot of both women and men that are very unhappy with that. If you ask quite a few women today that are career women, that have their equal relationship and so on and so forth, if they were completely 100% honest with themselves, so wouldn't they want a man that was a leader in their household? That man that's both a protector but also takes charge. I bet that quite a few of those that on the surface, because that's what accepted, say that no, I want everything equal. If they were completely honest with themselves, would say, I would like that to have a more feminine role and so on. But it doesn't mean that it's a goal in itself that people are that way. If humanity shifted so that women were the most dominant one on average, then that's not a problem. The problem is that people do things that are opposed to their personal nature and that have a tendency to make people unhappy. It's a bit like this. Cats, generally speaking, do not behave like dogs. They will not come when you call for them. They will not. There's a lot of behavior that cats do that dogs do not, and the opposite. If you force a cat to basically behave like a dog, you will have a very unhappy cat. But that doesn't mean there's not cats that are more of the loyal dog-like personality naturally, and they will be just as unhappy if they are forced to be like normal cats. You see, normality is not the same as nature. Nature is everything that exists. And natural is whatever is your natural state. So, a lot of people that are very much, you need to enforce a natural order, and by natural order I mean you need to enforce that men are dominant and women are submissive. And of course, watching this video, there are quite a few people that's going to say, but you are saying that Goreans shouldn't have the idea that women are submissive. No, I'm not saying that. Most women are submissive and should therefore be submissive because that's their natural state. I'm saying that if you have a dominant female, there's nothing wrong whatsoever for her to be dominant and Gorean. No, what a lot of them saying that, but in nature, when you look at animals, almost all mammals, it's the males leading and yeah. But here's the thing, yes, most mammals, the males are dominant, the females are submissive. But that doesn't mean there are not individual differences. Let me take an example. My mother had a dog up until a couple of years ago. Sweetest little thing, Bison Frise. His name was Teddy. Adorable creature. Anyway, he was as submissive as they come. If other dog looked at him, even a puppy, in a tiny little puppy, he would just lie down on his back and show his throat and act in a submissive way. And he always hid behind my mother. He was the most sweet-natured little submissive thing that you could imagine. Now, my mother has a friend that has hunting dogs. And he, at that point, had this beautiful dachshund. So it's about the same size as Teddy. And a female. And she was dominant as hell. Guess who was in charge when those two dogs played together? Yeah, that was the hunting dog. So they were both unusual for their gender, but they were still acting naturally. So here's the thing. I've taken this example so many times, but it needs to be said again. There was this survey in Norway with engineering students, and they asked these students, do you want to become a leader when you're done with your education? 80% of the men said, yeah, I want to become a leader. Only 20% of the women said, I want to become a leader. So you could see that there was a lot more dominant tendencies with the males than the females. And of course, and that's completely okay. And what I, as a Gorean, then would have said was, great, then those 20% of women that do want a leadership position, perhaps only 10% of them are actually dominant in any ways. I would guess that quite a few have other reasons for it, but those that are actually suited as leaders and so on and want to be that naturally, go for it. And for the men that want it, go for it. But what the state of Norway doesn't say is, this is troubling. How can we get more women to want to be leaders? That is what drives most Goreans out of their minds. Because that is saying we need equality even when it's not natural that it is so. I am against a lot of the ideas of the society within the books, because a lot of that society go against the very philosophies. The philosophy, among other things, have a strong tendency to what a meritocracy. A meritocracy means that you are judged by your merits. Then it shouldn't matter if you have a dick or not. What, however, is the case is that women have a tendency to have different merits than men. However, if you have a woman that have the same or better merits than a man for a situation, go ahead. The natural thing to do is say, oh, okay. If, for example, a woman is as strong as a man, can lift as much as a man, and she wants to be and is as brave as a man and willing to sacrifice her life, and she wants to be a firefighter, she can pass all the requirements and do the job on an equal footing as a man, go ahead. What I'm against is to lower the requirements for a woman. So, yeah. Generally speaking, a natural order do not need to be enforced. We do not need to threaten people or say that you cannot be part of a society if you are not doing such and such and such. A natural order is natural. It's how things will naturally go. Have I said naturally enough times now? Naturally. Anyway, it's the way things will go if there are no outside forces trying to push something in one direction or another. More women than men are naturally submissive, but we live in a society where submissiveness in women are frowned upon. Most men are dominant by nature, but we live in a society where dominance by males are frowned upon. And as such, people try to please those around them, try to suppress their own inner natures. And this creates conflicts, it creates illness, it creates unhappiness. And that is a problem. However, most does not mean all. And if we are going to function as an actually subculture, we cannot say, and especially if we're going to claim that our philosophy is natural, we cannot say, no, right here, reality doesn't really fit with my books, so I'm going to dig myself into the fiction and say fuck you to reality, you're out. That does not work. So when you meet somebody who's actually dominant, and if that's their natural, that's their natural state, or if they are very masculine, and so on and so forth, and they're female, that's their and being so is living by their own inner nature, they're as Gorean as you. Or if you find a male that is naturally submissive, they should be naturally submissive. Things are not as black and white as in the books. The point about natural order is that you should follow your inner nature, no matter what that might be. And for most people, their inner nature tends to mean that females are more submissive than males. However, trying to be submissive when you are not, even if you're female, is just as unnatural as trying to be dominant when you're not and you're female. So yeah, that was today's rambling. I hope you have enjoyed this video. Have a great day, and blessed be.